We got two of the four dogs sitting on my lap. Hello.
Hi. Am I echoing?
No. Yes,
Okay.
you are.
Yes. Damn.
You're in a new location today.
I am, yeah. I just jumped in from a work meeting, so I switch around, I move around depending on the type of meeting I'm having.
I like that. And I did get word last week, by the way, that you looked really fresh and dewy, like I said.
Well, thanks.
Hmm.
Do I look fresh and dewy today?
You look fresh and dewy. You always look fresh and dewy.
You look fresh and dewy now that you just
Well,
have some saliva.
now that I know exactly, it's par for the course. Anyways,
Okay.
all right, the nuances of dating and all the different stages. Can't wait to hear
Yeah.
about
So, I work with different age groups. My youngest client right now is 35 and my oldest is 73.
it. Okay.
And I'm working with all different people in between. And when I'm working with a client, whether it's a coaching client or a matchmaking client, I really have to cater my approach to their stage of life,
Yeah.
depending one on maybe the skills that they've cultivated at this stage of their life. Maybe it's extinguishing certain behaviors and trying to teach them new behaviors.
Can't teach an old
Um,
dog new tricks. Is that fair?
Right. And then also relationship goals. Like relationship goals is important and it
Oh,
does change as people are in different stages of life. And
yeah.
there's statistics to show in general like what a person's relationship goals might be given what age demographic they're in. So there's a lot of research to support this, but I also find it interesting when we're having like intergenerational dating. Like particularly let's say an older man wanting to date a younger woman and their lifestyle goals and relationship goals are strongly misaligned. It's like
Yeah.
how
The
do
girl's waiting for the guy to drop dead.
we
Did I say that out loud? She's
so I
like,
really,
how many more years do you have left?
well,
Am I paying your bill?
I there is a trend right now on social media, so I should say a content gap, not a trend. A content gap for people who are 40 plus in dating. So people who are usually like recently divorced and are back in the dating pool because most people get divorced in their 40s.
Mhm.
And so I had posted a video about this, and I actually got a lot of backlash on it.
Oh,
Like, yeah, because people were like, "What do you know about dating? Dating in your 40s, and you're not even 40." And I'm like, first off, you don't know how old. They didn't know how old I am, but they were just
he's
conjecturing.
75 and he looks really good for it.
Yeah, they have no idea. I could just look really good for my age.
Well,
So
you do
first
look
off,
really good for your age,
I was
but
like, it's offended. I found it a little offensive, but people were really angry. Like, I mean, people
yeah,
were
but I mean, you know
this.
what? You know what they say. The more people are talking, the more you did a good job. Like,
Well, I'm sitting there thinking, like, this is why you're single. Like, I'm like, you're obviously very bitter. But what I highlighted for me is that one, I think it's important to clarify to people that I'm working with people who are not similar to me. Like, and I think people make the assumption that, if a matchmaker or a dating coach should be providing services to people who are similar to themselves. And sure, maybe there could be some benefit from that anecdata, but actually statistically speaking from only personal experiences isn't the best way to service people always. Sure, there can be wisdom there, but it's not always the best way to service people in general or a general population. It's kind of like the same concept of like only being willing to go to a doctor for heart surgery who has had heart surgery themselves,
right,
or only willing to go to a lawyer who has also been sued for the same thing you're being sued for.
right.
Doesn't make any sense. No, these people are clinically and professionally and academically trained
To deal with this.
to to deal with this.
Yeah, and you have all of the background and all of the studies and all of the everything to
Yes,
support what you're suggesting.
yes, I am academically, professionally, and clinically trained to help people with romantic interpersonal relationships and psychology, and so I tell people, I'm like, I don't need to be in the same age demographic as you. I don't need to be the same sexual orientation as you. I don't need to be the same race as you. I don't need to be the same gender as you to be able to help guide you, because I'm not basing it off of just my personal experiences. I'm basing it off of education and training and over a decade of professional experience in this industry.
Right.
Um, and so I like want to clarify that before we dive into things, just in case people are like, what does this guy know about dating in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s?
No, I do love that. And I think, at any point, and even for myself, I jump on and I do what I do, and people don't know the backstory of, wow, I actually have my degree in exercise physiology. Wow, I actually did work in fashion. I did work in beauty. Like, I'm not just getting on here spouting out a bunch of information that I don't have experience with. And the dating part, no, you're right. I don't have an education in it, but I damn well do have a lot of experience. So
Wisdom. You have the wisdom, like you
I
have
have the
the
wisdom,
lived experience, and
and
that's
with you, that creates a whole conversation.
absolutely, exactly. There, I think there's value in both. Like, I mean, like I can speak about statistics, and I can speak about research, and I can speak about other people's experiences, and say like, here is what I know from the other clients that I've worked with similar. But I do think that there is value in also sometimes having the lived the experience
Yeah,
yourself as well.
sure.
There's a wisdom that can come with that.
I think
Uh,
I've gotten a lot of wisdom.
yeah, you have a lot of dating wisdom.
Yeah, I do.
So, okay, let's just start with the younger generations. I mean, right now, like, younger generations have it really hard. There's a lot of data and research out there right now showing that younger generations are having a really hard time with romantic relationships. Some studies just conducted showed that a large portion of, like, let's say 25 and younger, 20 to 25, um, they don't feel confident dating. Most of them have not had any dating experience, nor have they ever had a long-term relationship. Like, a long-term relationship is considered 1 year or more, and they don't feel confident approaching people. And a lot of them actually talked about how they feel depressed by dating apps, depressed by social media, and they feel there's a loneliness epidemic going on, particularly among younger men. And there is this pressure to couple up, but also they don't feel like they have the skills or the opportunities. And some of them in this survey that I was reading had said that they don't even feel like they could emotionally recover if they were to experience significant romantic rejection.
Well, I think the expectations for these guys, and let's just go back to wisdom. I have 3 kids in their 20s. The the pressure is so great. The boys, the pressure to have a great car, to have an incredible career, right? Because if they don't, these girls are going to the 35, 40-year olds. They don't
Right.
care.
Yes, well, what's interesting, you're absolutely right. So they were looking at like younger men and women in the same age demographic, like Gen Z, and what they found is that there are more single Gen Z males than there are single Gen Z females, which then indicate that the females are obviously dating older. And have you heard of the trend, the 666 trend? So the 666 trend is that women only want to date guys who make six figures, have a six pack, and are 6 feet tall or taller.
Or how about 6'5", finance, blue eyes,
Which kind of, yeah, same
black
concept
and
here.
concept?
Yeah, so
Well,
like
yeah.
there is this pressure on these guys, and so they are feeling, which this isn't, I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but I think that this is interesting. I think that's also what's leading men down this path into they're becoming, the incel community is growing. Incels, for people who don't know, are involuntary celibates.
Oh,
And so the incel community is growing, and just statistically speaking, which then leads to a lot of anger. Like, the incel community are the ones who like have a lot of those angry, violent online forums. um, and then also the like looks maxing community. Those are usually males who are in the incel groups who then go to like looks maxing, which there's pros and cons. I know everyone's like bashing on looks maxing, but I don't think people understand that there's variations, and looks maxing is to a certain degree just improving yourself, maximizing your
okay.
physical appearance. But there is a part of it where it's toxic, right? There's this toxic element of the looks maxing community, which has got the most hype, like the clavicular guy. like where they're like smashing their bones and injecting crazy things and have these insane diets and to reach a certain physical appearance in a very unhealthy way. So it's a really interesting and concerning dynamic happening with like these younger generations.
Yeah,
So I
well, sorry, that's the one thing I've really noticed the most is my daughter's expectation for these guys to be already so successful. When I married my husband, I knew he would be successful, but he wasn't rich when I married him. I just knew he was on the right track just by
right,
his energy and his work ethic and his passion and all of those things. I knew he was going to be successful, but I wasn't, I didn't marry the rich guy out of the gate.
that is, I think that's an interesting point because men typically do not make they don't they make the most in their 40s and 50s.
40 minutes, yeah.
So statistically speaking, men reach the pinnacle of their career in their 50s, and men make the most money in their 40s, and men make the most money in their 50s.
Sure.
And so, in this kind of age range, you could say. And so it's like look 40s to like late 50s is when men are going to be more financially stable and sound, which also explains why men are kind of having kids later now in life as well. One, obviously females timelines have changed in terms of when they're having kids. More women are having kids later in life.
Yeah.
Which obviously changes the man's timeline as well. But in terms of being fatherhood ready, a lot of men don't feel fully fatherhood ready till they own a home, till they own a vehicle and certain amount of money, until they have certain debts paid off, right? They want to make sure they feel like they have that foundation to
That's
support
exactly
a family.
exactly what my husband did.
And
So
it really doesn't happen until later. Not happening late. It's happening later and later.
he was
Um,
37 and I was 22.
Yeah, that's not it's not that uncommon. So I agree with you. I think that it's problematic in this generation. And so what I find in this generation is that what they really need is education on interpersonal relationship skills and on dating skills. Just the basics, right? Knowing how to approach someone in public. I was on a podcast and this guy asked me and he was younger and he asked me like what's a good way to approach a woman in person.
Okay.
I just kind of gave him like a basic tool that he can use, and he was like that's crazy, and I was like it's so simple, but just didn't feel like he had that skill set to be able to do that.
So what was it? What did you tell him to do?
I call it the three eyes to a pickup line. So the first eye is inquiry that's context relevant. So if you're at a Starbucks, you could ask like, oh, like, do you know what that says on that sign right there? Or like if there's a special or something, it's a context relevant question. You could ask it simply like, what are you gonna order? Do you know what the Wi-Fi code is? Any question that's context relevant just to start a conversation. You could even ask somebody if they're sitting down, like, hey, do you mind like watching my coat while I go to the bathroom? It's a
Wow, that's a good one.
then the next I is you provide some insight to start a dialogue. So if you're asking the question about what's the Wi-Fi code here, you like then provide some insight that yeah, I just decided to do some work while I'm sitting here. What like what about you? Like like you kind of start a conversation up. If you're asking her like what the special is, like you're like oh like have you tried that lavender latte before? I'm not really a lavender guy, but it kind of sounds interesting. Maybe she says no, and like oh like yeah, what's your favorite drink here? You start thinking, or like, oh yeah, I prefer the a red eye or whatever cafe au lait, whatever your drink of preference is. You just offer some insight. And again, it just kind of starts a little bit of small talk. Then after you have a little bit of the dialogue, the next eye is you just invite for further conversation. So you don't want to put somebody like a pressure on somebody to engage in a longer conversation for you right there, and that could be as simple as well, if you know that you've seen this, there's a chance if you've seen this person again, maybe it's like at a gym, or even if it is a coffee shop and you're like, I've seen this person here several times. We actually tend to come to the coffee shop around the
Yeah,
same
sure.
time. Then you simply say, well, hey, I'll see you around. I'll see you next time. That is a simple invite for further interaction on a later day.
So, hold
Or
on. that's actually really how I met my husband, because I taught aerobics at the gym that he went to. So it was kind of like that. Hey, what class was that you're teaching? And then, right. And then all of a sudden he started taking my class, but
Yes.
he
Yeah.
definitely did that.
I love that. I love that he took that initiative. And like if somebody's at a bar, like this is a little bit more tricky. People don't really approach at the bars anymore. But like one of my favorite techniques is you could use the drink method. Like, you could just go up to the bar and if you're standing next to someone, be like, oh, like what are you drinking? And then, maybe they tell you what they're getting. And if you want to be really smooth, then when you go up to the bar, you order it for them. And you'll be like, oh, like I'll have this, and they're having that, and you can put it on my tab.
Uh,
And then they're gonna say thank you, and then it opens up dialogue, and then you can just start a conversation there. You could even just ask like what they're drinking, like, yeah, I normally get this. I haven't tried that. That sounds pretty good. And then you just kind of start a conversation there, like, oh, like the eye for inviting for further conversation later is like, well, like, I'm sure I'll see you around here. And then maybe like an hour later, you just go, how's your night going? So you invited for further conversation that night.
damn, you're
Um,
good. You should teach this.
I used to love picking people up at the bars when I would go out. I thought it was just
You
fun.
should, you should literally, for fun, have, you have to have Micah okay with this. Micah be your videographer and just catch you doing these intros.
I was, yeah,
I mean,
I'm sure I'm sure he'd be game. Um,
he'd
and
probably enjoy it.
one of the other techniques that people can use is after you're with a group of friends, ask somebody to take a picture of you and your friends, and then after they
He's
take the
totally
picture, yeah, then you like, okay, like, oh, like, are you on social media? Most of them are. Most people are on social media. But like, what's your name? I want to make sure, even if they're not on social media, you could just ask their name. Like, I want to make sure that I give the photographer credit. Then you get their name, and if they are on social media, you could say like, "Let me tag you."
let me
What's the
stalk you.
Yeah, let me stalk you a little bit. But then later you can slide into their DMs. You now have their name.
Hey,
You can
thanks.
search
Hey, thanks
them.
so much for taking that picture tonight. It meant a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like you obviously have a good eye, and then you can just start a conversation online. So it's a low pressure way to get somebody's contact information, which is probably like one of the better ways if you're in one of these environments like a bar or at an event where like it might be hard to see them again or that you don't know how long they're going to be there.
Or not even that. Sometimes it just doesn't feel that good to be picked up on in that setting. But if you take
Yeah.
it outside that setting, there's no alcohol and you make an extra effort. It's a second touch, right? It wasn't
Yes.
just this instant you were there.
Right.
I
And
wanted a booty call.
And ideally, if you get somebody's social media platform and they're active on social media, one, you'll be able to look through
Learn
their
more
stuff and learn more about them,
for
which then
sure.
easier to follow up when asking for a date or suggesting a date. Then you can also engage with their content, and people, it's another touch point, which then creates a certain level of rapport because people are developing and forming relationships online more and more and more.
Yeah, I do think that's really happening too. Not necessarily the apps, but just sliding into the DM.
100%. If I, one of the things I recommend to my clients is using social media as opposed to online dating platforms. I think online social media platforms are more effective than the apps.
Well, I think they're a little bit more authentic. People are a little more authentic on there than they are on the.
Right. Well, and you can gather more in a way that you can be more intentional about who you reach out to because you can
Yeah.
kind of look through and try to learn more about them and assess like, do our interests and our hobbies at least align? You can even assess like, are they religious? Are they political? Like, what's their profession? Like you said, there's just more information you can gather and it's a little bit more authentic and real. I
Yeah.
know some people put on their social media channels like I don't respond to my DMs and I don't slide into my DMs. Facebook, Instagram's not for dating. Fine, ignore those people. There are millions of other people on the
And
platforms
they
who
have a
are
bad
comfortable.
attitude, anyways. Bye bye.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's at that point like, well, if this person, unless this person's in a relationship, they should be because obviously they're still single, and what they've been doing hasn't been working.
I always say single people are single for a reason, and single people suck.
So for that generation, for Gen Z, the goals that I'm finding is just learning and cultivating some of these dating and romantic interpersonal relationship skills, how to handle rejection, how to ask somebody out, how to set healthy boundaries, how to express needs, which I feel like those skills actually go into every generation. Every generation has cultivating these skills. So then we have like our millennials, and our people who are in their 30s and 40s. And this generation are usually wanting marriage and wanting kids. So my youngest right now is 35, and his goal is to get married and to have a kid. He's been focusing on his career. He, first was focusing on his education and got an
Get it set up.
and was focused on building his career. He's now at a place where he feels stable in his career, not ready to have a kid fully yet, but he is ready to meet a woman that he can form a relationship with, that they can then have a kid.
Right.
So, he's at a different stage. And most of my clients who are in their 30s and early 40s, they're in the same boat. Like they're
How tall is he?
he's 6'1". So 6'1".
Not for me, but
Yeah, so he's 6'1". So he's lucky in that sense. Him and I talked about that. I was like, this is gonna work in your favor. Make six figures, and I don't know if he has a six pack or not, but he's in great shape. So, um, he's very athletic or fit in general. So he's got all the attributes working for him, but doesn't have a lot of dating experience in and of itself because he hasn't been focusing on his romantic
sure.
relationships. So there is a little bit of cultivating those dating skills, but also in a different way. It's not just about picking a girl up at a bar and kind of learning the basics. I'm coaching him specifically on how do you have intentional conversations on the date so that he doesn't invest in the wrong women.
Exactly.
And teaching him how to find his skills a little bit. Like he knows he's not afraid to ask questions. Like he's not nervous. Like again, like the younger Gen Z might feel uncomfortable sometimes even asking intrusive questions. Do you want marriage? Do you want kids? Like what's your political views? What's your like these more personal questions that a lot of people are uncomfortable asking. He's not comfortable about asking them, but he needs to finesse because what he has self-identified is that he goes into this interview mode style of communication.
Not sexy.
No, exactly. So, while he might get the information he wants, it's not in a way that's also helping spark chemistry.
Right.
So, our goal for him is to focus on one, finding a woman whose goals are lifestyle goals and relationship goals are in alignment with his teaching him the skills to help assess that, on the dates and how to assess that through the courtship, teaching him, helping refine again some courtship skills like styling. He dresses nice overall, but like he dresses nice at work, corporate,
But he
but
doesn't have a casual vibe.
right. Doesn't know how to have that smart casual. It's either way too casual, like athleisure wear, or corporate wear. He doesn't know how to fall into that middle category for like smart casual date wear.
Where does he live?
Bay Area. So he's and which I mean, in the Bay Area, there it kind of makes sense. Like, they're either like they can be really casual, or there's also the strong corporate scene. So it makes sense to me that he's kind of struggled with that. And I feel like a lot of people struggle with it, finding that happy medium zone of
Yeah.
dressing up for a date.
Men, it's not that hard.
There's not a lot of options for us.
Right. Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, if you go to here in town, go to Nordstrom's. The stylists are amazing. There's a store here also called the Men's Shop. It's a beautiful store.
Yeah, for him, I recommended like right now, like the looser fits are in, and so we recommended some like looser fit linen shirts for the
Yeah.
warmer weather. Some like like looser fit, like straight leg dress pants, and like maybe some linen pants, maybe some like loafers, and then some dress shoes, and like a nice belt. I was like,
And done. Yeah.
yeah, and done. So then I think it's gonna look good on him. He's got like I said, he's actually pretty fit, and he's tall. So being able to wear looser fits works for his body type, whereas like, somebody's thinner or shorter, like these looser fits aren't always.
Did I don't know if you got to watch that YouTube video that I sent you last week.
Yeah,
Sent that, but he spent a lot of time talking about like making sure that you are very clear about what you want, because you can stay in that middle dating zone for way too long. You could be even living with the person and still not on the same path of your vision, the vision of your life. Like, don't
yes,
waste time. If this guy is ready to meet his woman and get married, like, you don't want to spend a year with somebody, dating them, having a good time, and find out, yeah, she's not ready to get married and she's not sure if she wants kids. Like,
yeah,
there is sort of a little bit of a finesse that has to go into still dating in a fun, sexy way where it's not like time is ticking. I need this, but also being pretty clear about what you want.
totally. We talked about kids, for example, the conversation with kids. Now, obviously, one of the benefits of him working with a matchmaker is that a lot of these things
You
are
know.
discussed beforehand. But he's also dating online, and so I wanted to give him the skills to help him when he's meeting women on his own as well. And so we did talk about the kids thing. And he's like, so like what's a good way to bring that up? I'm like, well, talk about it sooner rather than later. I'm like, don't assume that a woman wants to have kids or she's on the same timeline as you or even the same ballpark as you on the timeline.
And also the quantity is really important. There's a few things I want to say about that, because what do they say when they tell you who they are, believe it. If somebody says to you, I want one kid, you better be okay with one kid, because that's not necessarily going to change. People think, oh, I'll be able to make that happen.
Right. Yeah. Don't assume. And if it does, great. But you have to be okay with their answer right there. Like what they're saying. Just you have to be okay with it. And if it does
Yeah.
change, fine. But believe what they're saying in the moment.
And I also think now, I mean, I've had some conversations about politics, and that one has become it never, I don't feel like it ever used to be like that, but
No,
it
it's getting
sure
worse.
is
Yeah.
now. 100%.
Yeah, there's a big divide, and people are becoming more rigid, on their views and more extreme as well. It's like we're not coming closer together; we're coming farther
Yeah.
apart.
Yeah.
I'm encountering that in the matchmaking world as well, where it's becoming harder and harder to match people based off
There
of
are there are
their
dating
views.
apps for like liberals and conservatives.
Yeah, it's pretty. I've encountered that more and more where people are asking me, like, what's this person's political views? Who did they vote for? How do they feel about this? How do they feel about that? So I'm having these conversations more and more, and I don't have an issue having them, but it's just interesting that I'm having to have them more than I have in the past in the last 10 years and more to a deeper degree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Literally, a friend of mine almost got divorced over politics, and they've been together for, I don't know, 15 years, 16 years.
Yeah, I've heard some stories of that similar, like where, people's again, their people are coming farther apart, and it's like where people may have been more moderate on certain things. It's like now there's chasm that's happening, and even with people who've been together for a while.
Yeah.
Um, so for him, I told him how to like bring up the topic of kids on date one. I'm like, you can bring it up on date one and date two. It's like, you don't have to ask them, do you want kids? I was like, you could just talk about how you want kids. And I was like, it's always important to try to be context relevant. So said for you is like the 4th of July is coming up. Most people spend 4th of July with their families. So, ask her what is she doing for 4th of July, what are her plans, and then she'll likely reciprocate. You can share that you're spending it with your family, and then I was like, and then you can just share like, I'm really looking forward to spending time with my family on the 4th of July, and I love being around my nieces and nephews. I enjoy being around kids. Looking someday having my own, but for now I just have fun hanging out with my family and my nieces and nephews.
What's interesting though is I feel like, okay, a man that comes into a first date and has that conversation is like, oh wow, that's kind of cool. He wants to have kids. A woman comes into a first date and she's like, I really want to have kids. It's like, red flag, out the door, running.
Yeah, there's certain topics that, to your point, like land better when a man might say it, or lands better when a woman might say it. But I still think it's important to have these conversations. But there's ways to bring it up, as opposed to asking the direct question, "Do you want to have kids?" That can be a little bit. Some people might perceive it as intense. Some might not. Some might be like, "I love that you asked that." Especially if somebody's dating intentionally, then they'll probably appreciate it, but you can't assume that everybody's approaching dating in that way. So I always tell them, like, use stories to communicate like what your goals are, what your values are, and just see what they pick up, like see which ones they want to contribute to or join in on.
Well, we had to have the dating with intention story with the dogs because, right? Like,
I
you want me,
have 4 dogs. Yes.
right? You come with all five of me.
Yes.
It's a pack, and I mean that's real, right? It is what it is. I'm like, so
Yeah. So going into, our next age group, it's still important to communicate like what your goals are, what your individual goals are, what you see for yourself in your life. It sounds kind of
100%.
cheesy, but like what do you see for yourself for the next 5, 10, 20 years?
Well, for sure. Okay, this is where my wisdom comes into play. But like a lot of men, are like, I want to travel the world. Like I want to own nothing. I'm all about experiences. I just want to be a gypsy. In fact, humorously, gosh, I paid for Talkify, which by the way, don't pay for that. I'm coming out right now and saying that is a dating matchmaking company. Horrible. And I already had a bad experience working with a matchmaker, um, doing videos and stuff, and we won't get into that. But that was a bad experience before I met you. And then my parents were like, you know what? Why don't you get on one of these matchmaking things because you're serious about this. Put your money where your mouth is. So I did. I interviewed Talkify. They sounded really great. They're not. And they set me up on a bunch of dates, but one of them was few of them were virtual dates. And the guy literally is a gypsy. He lives everywhere. He has a place
Yeah.
all over the world, but doesn't have any home base. No family, like his relatives, his brothers, his parents are all deceased. I don't think he had kids, right? So it was just he could just kind of float and be anywhere, which that's great for him. But like being a mom with 4 dogs, like I definitely want to travel. I can travel. I have the flexibility to travel. I don't have to be stuck here, but I definitely want to have a home. I was like, this guy doesn't match my like. Why would you even consider setting somebody up that has 4 dogs and kids and family with somebody that's a complete gypsy? I was like, I can't even imagine. Where would my clothes be?
Right. And to a certain degree, that doesn't matter even if there's strong chemistry. Like if
No,
two people,
the lifestyle.
yeah, their lifestyles and their individual goals that are based off of their values, because values are really hard to change, and you don't really want somebody who's willing to compromise their values and so to that degree, even if there's strong chemistry, it's probably not going to work out long term.
Well, that's where we go to love is not enough.
Right. And I feel like a lot of people believe it is. You meet somebody and there's going to be strong chemistry, and not everything just magically falls into place after there's chemistry, and
Right.
that's not often the case from my experience in the
And
dating
that's the
industry.
hard part. I think that's the hard part.
Yeah,
Especially as we get older.
yes, because life's become more complex, and it's even more important to communicate like what your lifestyle is, what you want it to be, where you're going. Um,
Why waste time? Unless you both agree, look, let's just have fun. We know we're not going to, do this long term. And if you're good with that and you're just going to have a good time, then sure. Because there is that too. And that could be your vision for the rest of your life is, hey, I have my place, you have your place. Like, let's go travel the world together, but have no real commitment.
yeah, it becomes even more like unfortunately, the older we get, the more complicated it becomes to date and to integrate lives. People oftentimes think it becomes easier, but it doesn't, especially in your 40s. So there is something known as like the midlife slump. And so statistics show that in our 40s, which I'm not in my 40s, so I'm saying ours, but I'm just saying in general as humans.
Listen, zip it.
So the
Wait, wait.
40s.
You're not in your 40s. Well, let's go to the 50s.
So with our 40s, it's statistically shown that that is when people feel the most stressed, the most depressed. That's when the most divorces happen
Well, I
because
think, can I talk about my wisdom here?
yeah,
I mean, I'm sure you have all the statistics on it, but you get to this place where, and let me speak about my ex husband because it was once I get the wife, the house, the cars, the kids, this facade, right? Then I'm going to be happy. And you get to your 40s and you have the beautiful house and the beautiful cars and the beautiful kids and everything looks on the outside perfect. This idea of what you had from college that you're creating, you get, you have it, and you still feel empty.
that's
Now,
one of that is actually one of the statistics is they talk about how in the 40s the fantasy of childhood wears off and adulthood really sinks in.
and you're
Like
like, I did it. Everything I
this
dreamed
is
of.
life. This is my life and this is life.
And what more do I have? This is it. Wait,
Yeah.
I say that sometimes. I'm like, okay, God, like I'm waiting for it.
Hey, I'm still waiting for my letter from Hogwarts, okay?
Um, yeah, I mean, every stage, right? Every stage you get to this point and you're like, and my mom would say, she's like, Julie, high school is tough, but when you get to college, college is going to be so much better. No, you know what? College is hard, but you know what? You're going to get married and things are going to, no, you know what? Your kids, they're going to graduate and be on their own and you're going to have this whole life. And I keep going, oh, okay, what's next? What's next? But that is a lesson in wisdom is that you really have to learn, and I think that's what the 40s are about, and that's
Yeah,
why
and so
50s.
that's when it starts to really sink in. Plus, usually, again, we talked about that. Some people are in there, like having peak career demands. If they've had kids, they're usually in the trenches of raising kids. That's also when a lot of people have to start caring for aging parents or start intervening on parental care. Also, from a health perspective, that's when people start to experience significant health declines and have more health issues arise. They have to be more careful and mindful about what they do and what they put in their body. And so it's a whole thing that just piles up. So I'm not looking forward to my 40s.
Well, you know what? You're ahead of the game, and the reason that you're ahead of the game is that your career is understanding this. So most people don't, especially men, for the most part, haven't done that work. And so the work, they wind up finding this, getting into the work when they're so depressed, when their marriage falls apart, that's when they go, shit, I guess I need to like dig deep and look inside. And then they start realizing all of these things. And I think coming into my 50s now, which is why it's so awesome being in my 50s, is that you just don't give a flying fuck anymore. Like, I always say every morning I'm out there walking in my pajamas. I haven't brushed my hair or my teeth. I look like I'm homeless. Like people are like, "Are you a dog walker?" I'm like, "Nope." And you know what? I don't care. Of course, I love to look beautiful, but on the other hand, I don't really care. I really don't freaking care. I don't care what people think about me anymore. I am not censoring myself, even dating. It's like, you know what? If this doesn't work for you, you don't like the four dogs, bye. It becomes a place where you're like, either love me for who I am or get the fuck out.
Well, they do. Part of this study that I was looking at talked about how, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, this 40 or midlife slump. And it's that like people in their 50s and above then start to become more happy and comfortable and balanced. And there are more people dating later in life, not all for positive reasons. One is people are living longer, which is a positive thing. So there's just more people dating later in life just due to extended lifespan of humans. But then also the trend of the gray hair divorce. And so and that trend is continuing to grow, which is just more and more people divorcing later in life.
Well, I think people are getting, there was even, my parents have been married for 56 years. And so for me, I always thought I would be married forever. I really truly thought I'm such a loyal person, like I'm a relationship person. I never in a million years thought I would be divorced. And so people do hang on, I think still in my generation are hanging on because it was the thing that we were supposed to do. And then I think you get to the point where you go, you know what? I am miserable and I have one life. So my choice is I can continue living miserably like this for the to the end of my days, or I can make a change. And they say when the fear of being in the relationship is less than the fear of leaving the relationship, you're making the right choice.
Yeah. Well, there's more and more people who are divorcing later in life. Like again, pros and cons to that. Pro if you're single and you're 50 and above, because the dating pool is actually getting bigger and people are usually in a better place. They talk about how again the 40s is actually more of a struggle. And then once people hit 50 and above, they actually start to thrive more.
Sure.
And I've experienced that with my own clients. My clients who are 50 and above are usually thriving socially. They do seem to have this confidence and a self awareness. They've usually, if they're single again, they've done some of the work from their failed marriage and relationship that happened in their
Exactly.
40s. And so they usually do end up in a better place, 50s and above.
So my mom's joke is this couple is in their 90s and they go to the judge to get divorced, and the judge says, "Why are you getting divorced now? I mean, you've been together for all these years." They said, "Our last child finally died, so it's safe to get divorced now." Anyways, because
Yeah,
I,
I mean, later kids, like, yeah, people stay together for the kids, which is another reason why people are getting divorced later in life because they stay together until their kids are a certain age. So for the 40s, honestly, that is like one of the, I think, hardest from my experience. Not only, again, talking about all these statistics and the psychology of what is happening to people in their 40s, but even from my professional experience, matching people in their 40s is actually hard because there's so much going on in their lives. They have all these career demands, they have kids, and trying to even just like something this might seem so trivial, but it's so logistical, is trying to help people coordinate their custody schedules. Like if two people are divorced and they both have kids, like in their
and they
custody
come on
schedule,
opposite weekend,
yeah. And I've
and
had
you know
this
what?
happen.
And the partners are bitter and won't switch it.
And don't want to switch, right? And
Yep.
even if they do, like you have to still get it. Most people have to get it court approved.
Yep.
Custody schedules are usually court ordered. So you have to then say, well, do I like this person enough? And you just met them, right? You met them, you're like, I'm interested in them. I want to date them, but our custody schedules don't align. And I can't, it's hard for me to even see them to establish, is this worth investing in more? And
Right.
it could be a great fit, but they don't even have the logistical, their schedules are not working logistically to allow them to get to know each other. And are they going to change their custody schedule for somebody they just met? Are they going to go to their ex? Are they going to go back to court to do this? Most likely not.
You are so right about that. Ugh.
So, I mean, when I'm matching people in their 40s, I actually do have to ask about, like, what's your custody schedule? And I'm like, and if you were to meet somebody, and I like ask, like, I have to ask questions like, do you leave your kids home alone? Like, do you have a regular babysitter? Do you have a stay-in nanny, an au pair? Like, I have to ask all these questions to try to
Well,
understand.
and that's another thing too, is even if, okay, I'll hire a babysitter on the weekends that I have them, most parents feel very guilty leaving their kids with a babysitter to go on a date when
One
it's
day it's their week. Yes, 100%. I counter this a lot. And so then, for them, my coaching is sometimes a little bit different where I might say, might need to integrate faster. Like, but then they don't want to because they're like, I don't want to introduce my kids to somebody I'm just dating unless I know that it's serious. And some people have some really hard and fast rules about when they would and when they won't and introduce somebody. And I'm like, but the sooner you introduce them or begin to integrate, the easier it is to work around your schedule. I'm like, so maybe you have to go to a kid's sporting event, but you could invite them along with you. Like, hey, do you want to come with me to Billy's baseball game?
But it's
Like,
tricky. I mean, it depends on the kid's age. I didn't, luckily, I mean, and that one of the reasons why I stayed so long in my marriage was for that reason. So that I did not have to worry about the kid situation because, kids do attach. And so you
yes.
risk that they attach and then all of a sudden you pull out and then they're left going,
Yeah, I
I really
completely.
liked that.
Yeah, I don't have kids, so I can't relate to it from like a personal experience. But I
Yeah.
see with my clients where it's like I don't want my kids to see men or women going in and out of my lives. I don't know if this person is safe yet or not. I don't want to bring someone into my family who in my home and into my kids' home
Yeah.
unless I know who they are and say trust them completely. So I'm like, I get it, but so it's 40s is really complicated.
Yeah.
It is.
So the moral of the story is don't work with 40-year-olds.
it's, it's hard, and I like my 40-year-old clients. Now, some of our 40-year-old clients don't have kids, and they've never like been married, or maybe they were married and they just didn't have kids, and so they don't plan on having kids. Those 40-year-olds are pretty easy to
Right.
match.
Yeah.
No kids, actually, they're really easy because then they're still like in their, like they're still younger, which, the courtship oftentimes favors youth. So they're still young, they have money, they're successful, they've, and they
Well,
also
and
don't have kids or exes
it
to.
opens up the number of women they can date because they could go all the way from 40 down to pretty much 20-ish.
Right. Yeah. 100%. So it makes it easier. And also, like, if it's a female and she's in her 40s and like, she's frozen her eggs, that also makes her more viable to like younger men and to also older men who don't have kids and want to have kids. It does become a little bit more tricky, because I find that women who are who are in their 40s, who haven't had kids, who still want to have kids, that becomes complicated if it's a desire of theirs. Because a lot of men in their 40s already have kids and probably don't want to have more kids. They're like, I already have one ex with kids. I'm in the process of raising them. Like, they're not even grown yet. And the idea of having another child is overwhelming for a lot of men, you know. So, and women too, women who have kids and they meet men who don't have kids in their 40s and they're like, I want to have more kids. And I worked with that dynamic too, where I have a female client who says that she's open to having, she already has kids. She says she would be open to having more kids if a guy wanted to have kids, but it's not oftentimes her ideal, but
Yeah.
she will be open to it. But again, it's complicated. Like, so 40s complicated.
Yeah.
50s becomes usually easier. Um, but the goal
Harder
of,
for the women.
yeah, it becomes harder for women in 50s. And that largely has to do with just age. Men oftentimes are dating younger, want to date younger. I do find that though the good news is that, and you and I've talked about this, is like men in their 50s, that's not the age. Like I work with men in their 50s who are still fine dating women that are close to their own age or
Yeah.
at their own age. Do they date younger? Yes. Would they prefer younger? Probably. But they're not opposed to dating a woman still in their age. It's like when men get into their 60s, that's where I find that they start to become more rigid about dating younger women.
Really?
Yeah, it's like they're usually 60s. Like they might still be, at least my clients, they might be amenable to the idea of dating a woman their age, but for the most part, they're like, no, I want to date younger. So 60s is when they become more rigid.
Well, one of the things that I hear from men a lot is they find that women in their 50s, like the guys that are in their 60s, that the women in their 50s don't have the energy that they have. And they're looking for women that have the energy that they have. I'm like, freaking bring it. But
Yeah.
they but that's what I hear is that a lot of these women don't have the energy. And so ladies, I'm just gonna throw this out there. Hormone therapy. Hello. Make
I
sure
think there is a lot of research to show that people are not good judges of their own health. and their own energy levels and their age. Like, not only from a psychological perspective, but just like an overall lifestyle perspective. Like, psychologically, definitely, there is lots of research to show that people tend to say that they look and feel younger than they actually are. And it's because we don't see ourselves aging, right? And it's like, because could you imagine that if every day you looked in the mirror, you saw yourself aging, we would have an existential crisis
I would kill
every day.
myself, and so would
Like, so it's like our brains are protecting us to a certain degree where we don't recognize like some changes until they're like reach the point where it's more significant. Because I'm sure you've heard this, where all of a sudden someone looks in the mirror and it's like it reached a turning point where they find like, oh wow, there's been some changes,
yeah.
and I see them now. But then our brains quickly adjust to these changes, and then it becomes the new norm.
Then we just take a Snapchat photo and we feel better.
Yeah, well, look at me. I'm still in my 20s.
I just had to smooth it all out.
But the interesting thing is, like, I was talking to this longevity doctor. Like, he's a doctor who specializes in longevity research and longevity treatments. And he has his own clinic. It's actually really cool. You would probably love it. He does all this stuff for lifespan and health span. And him and I were talking about like dating, and we found like the crossover where he's like, I'm sure you hear people say that they want to date younger because they believe that they feel and look younger. Like,
Yeah.
all the time. All the time. And he's like, yeah, it's very similar in my field. He's like, people will come to me and they'll tell me like, oh, I feel like I'm really young or youthful. I'm active for my age. People tell me I'm really young. He's like, but they don't have like relevant or context compared to the general population. And they might not understand like, actually, no, they actually might be older, like looking and feeling and acting than other people, because they just don't have that comparison of the larger body of people to compare themselves to.
Right.
And so he told me about how he had one gentleman who was talking about how he was really youthful and healthy and active. And but I saw him struggling to get out of a chair. Like he was moving slow, and I could tell he was experiencing some lower back pain, maybe some knee pain. But for him that was normal, but in his mind he thought that he was still young, this like that moving and acting young, but I could see that he was not acting and feeling as young as he reported on the questionnaire.
So interesting.
And so I was like, yes. I was like, I see this a lot where people will tell me that they look young or that they're youthful and active. And then I'll be comparing them and I'll be thinking about people that maybe actually are in that age group that they want to date. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I mean, even myself, like I've had experiences where I'm like, oh, I feel still so youthful. And actually that's not true. I'm usually always feel like I've always felt older than I actually am. But
well, I think you're just an old soul.
I've always felt like older, but I will say that like I don't consider myself like old. But when I'm around Gen Z or younger,
You do.
I do, and I'm like, okay. I was like, I see the age disparity now.
Well, you're probably seeing more maturity than anything else.
Yes. I mean, but like even seeing like the way that like some of them move, like in sports and stuff, like because Micah, he's dragged me to some of games for his students, and like I'll be watching them playing their sports, and I'm like,
can't do that.
No, I was like, I mean, and even like I could do it, but I think about how like I'm like, it would probably take me more effort. I was like, I'd probably be sore. And like, also I'm like, no, I was like, I know I'd be at a higher risk of like throwing my back out or something. So I'm like,
get the shovel, start digging that grave.
yeah, but I'm like, okay. I was like, no, I was like, I can see the difference. So it's like sometimes people just don't even recognize that. But for 50s, like the relationship goals that I see are for most people in their 50s is that they still want cohabitation.
Yeah.
All of them need marriage. So I think that's an important
need marriage or want marriage?
Both. Like, I find like I ask, like I would say, because some people need it, not need it in terms of like financial, but like they need it in terms of like they feel like that is what validates a relationship.
That's
And
interesting. So, do you feel like this is a good question? I think we should talk about this. This might be a show about where marriage is going these days. Because I feel like so many relationships these days, like I know so many people that have like baby daddies, and they live together, but they never got married. They have no intention of getting married.
yeah, but marriage rates are going down. So that is actually that's statistically accurate.
So, but would you say that older people are still gravitating? Because I honestly like, I believe in marriage. I am a total romantic. Like, I don't need a man to support me. So that's not the reason why I would get married. But I don't know. There is something to be said about like having that union. However, do I need to do it by a court of law, or do we just throw a big party and throw a ring on it?
That's where I find like this in the 50s, like so like your thought process is exactly what I hear for people dating in their 50s is like this idea of, do I really need to remarry? I find that a lot of people still have this desire because there's this idea or notion that this is the thing that you do when you meet somebody that you want to spend your life with.
Yeah.
And so it's an ideology that they still carry. And so there's
And there are reasons. I mean, you can do that all in a trust, right? There are reasons why being married, if something happens to them, where
sure.
you can pull the plug on them when you're like, yeah, no, I'm not going to take care of
Right. Well, and I find that also be like so. There's the the legal reasons for it, and even like tax benefits that can come from it.
it.
But
Right.
sometimes it doesn't make sense for people in their 50s to like,
Right.
especially people who are like high asset. Then they're like thinking about like, well, I guess we would have to get a prenup. There's just more steps that they would have to put in place
Well, I
for
think
the marriage to happen.
I, I would think even if you didn't get married, if you were going to stay together, you would want to really, I have a trust. So I would probably, change my trust a little bit to say, if I were to get in an accident, let's say he might be the one that has the right to say what finally happens. And maybe there is money in there that I would leave to him, or the house, or, right? Like, even if you're not married by the law, there's still things that you would probably want to do to protect each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. I think that there are ways to achieve similar legal rights without
Being
without marriage, but marriage makes it a little bit more simple. It just kind of takes care of it all for you, in one fact, essentially. Um, but I find that people are like when people are younger in general, marriage is usually like, yeah, of course, that's a goal. Marriage. I would like to be married.
well, and I think
Um,
too, when you're having children together, the name and all of that, it just gets confusing otherwise. And the rights to the children, if you're not married, also becomes
yeah.
tricky.
So in the 50s, people are usually they're shifting out of that mindset where it's like, okay, maybe they've probably been married once or a few times. And they're like, but now is it necessary? They're probably not going to be having kids with this person. But usually cohabitation is always on the table. Like they
Yeah.
still want to move in with somebody, whether it's them moving in with them moving in, the person moving in with them, or they move in with the person, or buying a new home together. But that's usually a a main goal is some level of formal commitment. Oftentimes, marriage is still on the table,
This is a
and cohabitation.
there's a whole nother, I feel like here's another show. Are we taking notes? Because I also hear that there's a lot of this whole like, I'll keep my house, you keep your house, and we'll just do this. Like, it's great to be together and it's great to have time apart. Thoughts on
See, I find that moves once we move into like our 60s and above. That's when that becomes more of the goal or an acceptable dynamic.
that? Okay.
Because it is focusing more on companionship and just having someone to do things with, and having one person to do it. And so like the relationship becomes less of let's fully integrate to let's keep our separate lives, but let's also start doing things together. And I have had this happen with, especially like with my clients who are in their later 60s and 70s, where that's where they shift to, is that marriage is no longer a must or even a strong desire. Cohabitation is not even a super strong desire either. They might be open to it, but it's not a must. They're comfortable in their lives. They want the other person to be comfortable in their own life, and it just seems easier to spend time at one another's homes, and as opposed to trying to completely build a whole new life together from the ground up at that stage of life.
All right, look at that. Another hour.
On the dot, and we made it to the last age group.
You did good. All right. Well, I feel like too we have like there were topics in there that we could circle back to and spend a whole hour on.
Yeah, like commitment types of relationships, like what's
So
happening.
there's
There's
just so much to talk about.
it is drastically changing in how people are defining
Yeah.
their relationships.
I don't know if it's good or it's bad, just different.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, let me know what next week is. Can't wait for it.
Okay, I'll see you
All right.
then.
See you later.
Bye.